Hello, this video on Romeo and Juliet focuses on the prologue. Let's take a look. You can see from the image on the screen a version and some different versions of the text when it's put on screen. In the top left, we have the 1960s version by Zeffirelli that some of you would have seen. On the right, there is an image of sort of more traditional version of Romeo and Juliet. In the bottom left, you just have the sort of fairly famous iconography of Baz Luhrmann's version. I say iconography because what we have there is, in the middle of Romeo and Juliet, a cross, because that particular film version makes an especially important point of the significance of religion, how it seeks to tie these people, these warring families together, but the gods conspire against Romeo and Juliet, how fate is not on their side. And it is that, arguably, which seals the deaths of Romeo and Juliet. Their actions, no matter what they try to do, they cannot escape the fate of the gods. And here is the prologue. And the prologue builds on that idea of religion and fate in particular, because it tells us specifically what is going to happen. The question at the top there says, consider the purpose and function of the prologue. What does it tell the audience? It tells us the events. Let's read it. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which, but their children's end, naught could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage, the which if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. Let's go through it and pick up on the specifics. What are we being told? Firstly, that there are two families, two households who are both alike in dignity. They're of equal status, they're of similar status. In fair Verona, fair meaning beautiful, and fair in the traditional sense, meaning that things are just, that they are righteous, that they're equal. So Verona is being presented as a lawful state where rules must be abided by. So in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, where it's all taking place. From an ancient grudge, from an old hostility, from old hatred, we get a new fight. We get new mutiny. Mutiny is sort of rebellion, uprising, and the families are uprising against one another. These two households, which are both alike, have got a new mutiny. There's a new battle. And that new battle makes civil blood, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. And here Shakespeare is punning, there's a play on words of what civil means, because to be civil means to be civil to a person, means to be kind, to be honourable, to be pleasant, to be civil to one another. But it also plays on the idea of a civil war, how it makes civil hands unclean. A civil war being a battle, a conflict between warring groups in a particular country. And so Shakespeare here is utilising the history of the War of the Roses, the War of the Roses that ended in 1485 with the Battle of Bosworth, a war between two different families. On the one hand, you have the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York. In the real War of the Roses, that Battle of Bosworth, it was Henry Tudor, Henry VII, father of Henry VIII, who came to the throne. He won the battle, but he was given legitimacy and credibility as a king. He was able to have a strong claim to the throne because Henry Tudor, Henry VII, as he became, married Elizabeth of York. And so Shakespeare is utilising this idea from about 100 years previously that love has the power to unify and bring people together where hatred sort of splits, divides, causes friction and hostility. So in the first quatrain, the first 4 lines, and we can see that it's quatrain, and that it's divided through the use of the full stop at the end of the first group of 4 lines. Shakespeare is establishing who the families are, what their status is, and that there is hostility between them. There is a civil war. The next group of 4 lines, the next quatrain, from the line which ends foes to strife, tells us the next section. We get more information in these 4 lines. What are we told? From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes, so from the loins, from the inner thigh really, of these 2 enemies, foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. And that line there is probably the most significant in the whole of the prologue, really, because it tells us what specifically happens. A pair, 2, of star-crossed lovers take their lives. What's the significance of star-crossed? Was it written in the stars? Does it reinforce this notion of fate? If their paths were running true, they might run parallel. But the fact that they are crossed, and if we operate at crossed paths or work at crossed paths, or if we cross paths, it suggests that there is not unity, there is not conformity, that there is friction ahead. And these pair of star-crossed lovers, we can see that they take their life. Typo. Whose misadventured piteous overthrows do with their death bury. Sorry, let's start that again. Whose misadventures piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife. What are we being told there? That they're piteous, they're pitiful, they're pathetic, their sort of tragic actions ends the feud, ends their parents' hatred, ends their parents' strife. Terrifying, really, terrible. But the audience here are specifically being told what's going on. And this will create something called dramatic irony, where the audience will know more than the characters on the stage. And that arguably helps to create more tension, more suspense. We know what's going to happen. We don't quite know how it's going to happen, and therefore that's where maybe the enjoyment of the text comes from. But these characters don't. And we see their flaws all the more clearly because they don't recognize the error of their ways until it's much too late. And thereby they conform to the idea of the tragic hero, both Romeo and Juliet. Tragic heroes to some degree because they are great. They are great because they have the capacity to love. They have the capacity to feel something powerful that could bring these warring families together. But they don't really tell anyone about it, and they hatch these kind of ridiculous plans, and their excessive passion is reckless and dangerous. And that thing, that capacity to love that makes them great, is also their fatal flaw. It's their tragic flaw. It's their Achilles heel. It's what brings about their downfall. The next quatrain from these 4 lines here, let's put that into a different colour so you can see it hopefully reasonably easily, is a sort of process. It's logistical. These are logistical 4 lines, really. What do I mean by that? Well, it just sort of tells us what we're going to see next. The fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage. So the first 3 lines reveal plot. Their relationship is fearful, that their relationship is death-marked, that their love is, and death, I should say, is inescapable. It's fated. We have strong evidence of Shakespeare's foreshadowing and foreboding the tragic denouement at the end of the text. So the first of those lines in green tells us fearful passage of love and it's death marked. Second line there tells us that their parents' hatred continues. Third line, only their death can remove that hatred. Fourth line, here are our logistics. This is what we're now going to watch for the next 2 hours. This is the 2 hours traffic, the 2 hours back and forth of what we see on the stage. And the last 2 lines, we have a rhyming couplet. The difference between them being, between these 2 lines and the other lines, is that attend rhymes with mend. There's our rhyming couplet. What does it mean? Ultimately, the which, if you with patient ears attend, if you listen and watch carefully, whatever you've missed here, our toil shall strive to mend. So whatever you've missed in these opening 14 lines, the remaining 2 hours of the stage's traffic will tell you what's going on. So the prologue informs us of the key events. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, and it's the taking of their lives which ends the friction, the fraught relationships between the Montagues and the Capulets. Now you may have noticed as I was reading it, and it's important that one reads it, that there is this deliberate rhythm and pattern in the way that it both looks on the screen and the way it sounds. I may just read the first 4 lines again to demonstrate this. 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Firstly, we should notice the rhyme scheme. Dignity here rhymes with mutiny. It's not a perfect rhyme, no doubt you can hear that, but in terms of the way the words look on the screen, as you can see them now, and sound, there is this rhyme. And of course, scene, oh, wrong colour, let's go that one, rhymes with unclean. And what we have here is Shakespeare using the traditional form of the sonnet to ultimately tell us that this is a text and a plot about love. Because what is a sonnet? A sonnet is a 14-line love poem which uses iambic pentameter and, for Shakespeare, a particular rhyme scheme. I will use the mouse to track the different sort of rhymes and letters. Dignity, A. Scene, B. Mutiny, A. Unclean, B. Foes, C. Life, D. Overthrows, rhymes with foes, C. Strife, rhymes with life, D. So we have A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. Shakespeare is making it clear through structuring the text in the form of the prologue that Romeo and Juliet is a text preoccupied with affairs of the heart. It's preoccupied with love, arguably the major theme in the text. How love and conflict really sort of coexist rather unhappily, as seen by the tragic ending of the text. So the text parallels historical events in the form of the War of the Roses. We see how love has the capacity to unify where hatred divides. We will be shown how Romeo and Juliet are great because of their capacity to love, but that their capacity to love leads to an excess of passion, and it is this which is arguably their downfall. Shakespeare uses his rhyme scheme and iambic pentameter, the dee-dum, 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 with one stressed and one unstressed syllable. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny. I'm deliberately hamming up the sort of sing-songness of it, but the reason that this is done and the reason that we have this iambic pentameter is to elevate the significance of what we see in the stage. It's not easy to write with iambic pentameter and using this sonnet form. It's heavily stylized, and the heavily stylized, highly complex nature of it helps to elevate the importance of the characters and what they do. It's not mere chit chat. It's not written like idle gossip. It's written in this highly stylized, highly poetic form to illustrate to us as the audience, and perhaps as a reader in this instance, that these are figures of greatness. And what they do, while tragic, is also great. It's admirable. I mean, it's stupid, don't get me wrong, it's stupid in many, many ways, but it's admirable too. Ultimately, and I know I've used that word a few times now, but ultimately, Romeo and Juliet are young people who fall in love, who believe that they have the capacity to shape their own destinies, but arguably fate, the gods, conspire against them. For us as the audience, we know that this is going to happen, and they don't. And arguably, that's one of the most significant ways that we derive enjoyment from the text. Not enjoying that these young people are going to die, far from that, but we know that a tragic fate will befall them. And for us, it's the intrigue is derived from, well, how is that going to happen? How will it be unpicked? That will do for this particular video. There will inevitably be more and more things that one could highlight here. But what we'd like you to do with this extract is consider, how does Shakespeare use the prologue to inform us as the audience about the text? So there'll be a question that we will attach to this to make it useful for you to practice your writing. That question will go in the comment section on the YouTube video, so do have a look there. I might tweak it ever so slightly, but the idea is that by watching the video and practicing your writing, you have the chance to keep up with all the interesting things that are going on in school at the moment. That's it. Thank you very much. We'll leave it there for this particular time. Bye-bye.